All right, this morning, as you're probably aware by now, the administration and surely the Republicans on Capitol Hill are moving to their fortified bunkers over the budget battle. Good time to check in with Larry Kudlow, who you know is the host of CNBC's Kudlow Report at 7 p.m., and you can hear him right here on WMAL on Saturdays starting at 7 p.m. with the Larry Kudlow Show. Larry, good morning.
Good morning, Fred.
I've got in front of me your Friday column, which is obviously not a very favorable comparison between Barack Obama and Ronald Reagan. But I thought, and you've probably had a chance to at least peruse the president's budget, what do you think Ronald Reagan's budget would look like in a crisis like this? How would he respond to what clearly looks to be a debt limit that, if I'm looking at this number right, will actually surpass the total size of the U.S. economy this year unless something is done?
Well, I think that the biggest contrast between Reagan and Obama is that Reagan sought small government solutions by lowering spending and reducing tax rates. And I think Mr. Obama, of course, had a gigantic spending increase in 2009 and anticipated significant tax hikes. And you see that once again in this budget. In other words, my article was aimed at the 2009 stimulus package,
yes,
so-called, which really failed to stimulate. But this budget, the one that I love the most is for 2012, the next budget year, you have a grand total of $6 billion in domestic discretionary budget cuts out of a $3.7 trillion budget and a $1.1 trillion deficit. $6 billion is the best that they can come up with. And I think that really is pathetic. And I think that's why the Republicans are going to disregard this and move along. I mean, let's face it, Paul Ryan has already put a $100 billion marker in for last year's budget, and they're going to seek the same kind of marker for this year's budget because we have a crisis. So this is a very poor document. And I want to add this. Tax hikes proliferate throughout this 10-year budget. This is completely anti-growth with all kinds of tax hikes on businesses and successful earners.
We just talked to a small business owner in Texas, and we were talking about the economy. He said, yes, things are better today. They're slowly getting better. And I asked him whether or not it was sustainable, and he said, well, I don't really know if it is sustainable or not. There's no getting around the fact that things are a little bit better today than they certainly were a year ago. But, Larry, in your opinion, do you think it is sustainable at the macro level?
I think it could be, depending on whether governmental policies nurture or discourage this thing. That's why I think this budget stuff is becoming important. And to be honest with you, my own view is the tax penalties are the most important aspect. Look, you just had a survey of Wall Street Journal economists out yesterday predicting 3.5% growth for 2011. And I think that's quite reasonable. It could even be better than that. I thought that the Bush tax cut extension was a very positive development back in December, and I think that has helped the environment. But I think if these, you've got $327 billion of corporate tax increases in this budget. You've got $129 billion of taxes on the foreign earnings of multinational corporations. You've got a tax assault on the energy business, left and right, several taxes. These are the kinds of things that will really damage the whole economic outlook and, of course, the jobs outlook. And, of course, you still have Obamacare out there with its proliferation of taxes. So that's my point.
Another thing that worries me, and I don't know if it worries you or not, I mean, Bernanke's taken a lot of heat from conservatives, I think, that because of quantitative easing, but interest rates have been pretty low, and I think that's helped, and now they're starting to creep up a little bit. Are you worried about that moving forward?
No, it's long-term rates have gone up about 100 basis points since last summer, but that's mostly because of a stronger economic growth, and these are mostly real interest rates. The expected inflation rate is pretty much stabilized at about 3% or slightly less, which I think is too high. And you do have commodity inflation, which is a big threat out there, which Bernanke doesn't seem to get. But I think taxes really matter, gentlemen. And coming back to your first question, Ronald Reagan lowered tax rates for individuals and businesses back in 81. Finally took full effect in 83. That's when the economy grew at 7 or 8%. The trouble with this Obama budget is most of the so-called deficit reduction comes from massive tax increases, and that's wrong. It's just bad for the economy.
But those policies are driven, really, I think, by kind of ideological precepts, regardless of whether it's Obama or Clinton or anybody. Our small business expert was saying, look, I don't want to be in China, but I need to make my market. And that's the way I create jobs right now, because by selling my product, I'm creating jobs. I'm not taking them away. But to most people in this administration, and you've obviously heard this many times, is a net job loss or a net job gain in a country like China is a net job loss in the United States. It ain't that easy.
Well, no, it's not that easy. But I will say this. If you want to create incentives to invest here at home, then get the tax rate down. We have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. Okay, that's wrong. So taxes are going to play a role in these decisions. So let's try to keep as much of that home as we possibly can. And incidentally, one of the other things Team Obama has completely dissed, this business of taxing the foreign earnings. It's a double tax on the foreign earnings of corporations. That's crazy. No other developed country does that kind of thing. If you had a repatriation tax holiday like we did in the mid-2000s, you could bring $600 billion home to put to work here. Instead, they are staying with the tax penalty. So that's just nuts. This is the most anti-growth. It's funny. I'm a budget hawk, but I don't go as crazy as some people do about deficits and debt. Mm-hmm. To me, if you grow the economy, that's the best salve. Mm-hmm. And I want to see supply-side tax policies. There's nothing of that in this budget whatsoever. That's the biggest flaw in the thing.
I know you had Ron Paul on your show last night. What'd you think of the doctor?
I always like having him on. He's very provocative. I love his message of freedom and liberty. I really like that message. I love his hard money message. I don't necessarily agree with everything Ron Paul says, but I just really like his free market message. I find it very refreshing and very sensible, and I think it's kind of cool that he won the CPAC 2 years in a row. I mean, he's got a real following.
Yes,
we conservative.
By the way, his son is not exactly emerging as a backbencher in the Senate either.
No, I've interviewed Senator Rand Paul, and he's I think a brilliant guy.
Yeah,
a brilliant guy.
It's kind of a stereotypic effect now. I mean, with one Paul in the House and one in the Senate.
Mm.
I think it's a fascinating family, and I think like father, like son, you got two really smart doctors, and they're going to really make their mark. And I think Rand Paul is going to be a key. Look, free market policies are the best path to prosperity, and you're going to see a follow through on the Tea Party agenda. So we're going to look for lower spending and lower taxing. The Obama budget is going to become a fairly irrelevant document, really.
All right, Larry, always good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on the show again.